Yeah, it's kind of raining again. Not too heavy, but heavy enough that I can't work outside or work on seals. It's still kind of cold. I bet you it's 40. It's supposed to get down to 15 here in a couple days and a high of 20, 25. However, what I have going on is a little insulation work. Let's see if I can get some light down here. Since it's cold and I can't do a whole lot, I figured I'd start warming this thing up so I can turn the furnace on in here and actually keep the heat in. So I started cutting the isopoly propylene or isopoly foam. It's this 3-inch foam that I used in the floor. And what I'm doing is, it took me a little while again to figure out how to not make this too much of a mess. And these are a little easier than the floor because they are almost all the same width. So basically, I can rip these on the table saw and it just pokes through the back side. Every now and then I have to take the knife and slice the paper, but it cuts the foam pretty nice. You can see the seams are pretty tight and they're all squished in there snug. And anywhere I might have a little miscut or a little space, I'm just going to come back with spray foam. And my little areas like back in there and back in the corner and up in the corner there, I'll spray foam. But I'm starting to get some pieces in the ceiling, and that one's obviously just stuck between the joists, and I actually had to take a hammer and a board to get it up in there. So I'm working on that. Raining, just raining. And I'll show you the setup. We had it set up outside when the rain came in. So what I'm doing is, there are my sheets of insulation, and I've got, I had 14, 15 total, and I've gone through about 3, just shy of 3. That's the end of my third one. And all I'm doing is just ripping them on the table saw to the right width, and then I bring them over to the saw horses and just take the Sawzall with a bimetal blade and just go at like half RPMs straight up and down and rip through the shortcuts. So I'm only cutting through 14, 15 inches to get the length I need. And that's working out pretty well. The only mess is coming out of this monster, out of the exhaust, obviously. I've got a little buildup in there, but I did clean it out. And I'm going to hook up a tube into a bucket and see if I can't create a collection system of sorts. So that's where we're at, trying to warm the thing up. So here's what I've got going on. It's still messy, but I've improved a little bit. So I've attached a quote-unquote dust collection system, and it actually pulls a lot of the dust out of here. And I've got it going into a vacuum, and I gotta clean it a lot, but it seems to work pretty well. Keeps the dust out of my face and the garage. So basically, I'm cutting the 8-foot sheets into the width between the studs, 14 and 5/8, 14 and 3/8, whatever it is. And I'm down to 2, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 sheets. And basically, what I'm doing is just throwing them on the table saw and ripping them to length. And then whatever's left over, I'll throw that in a cavity and then just fill in the gap with another piece. I don't know if you can hear that or not. That little guy's sucking some stuff out of there, so I've got the tarp over it and a rug below it to catch any stuff that comes out of the filter. So there you go. Let's go see if they go in. So I'm taking a break from pounding these in to show you what I've got going on. Starting to get the roof walls in, and then I can get the ceiling in, because the roof wall has to go in first, and eventually I have to foam this little space. Actually, no, where am I at? These little spaces. So what I'm doing is cutting these on the table saw and actually using this guy to slam them in because they're that snug, which is perfect. So yeah, got a ways to go. I think I've got about 10 sheets left. And it's not perfect. You can see up there, I've got a little bit of a gap on that guy. And that's one of the ones I cut with the Sawzall. That's not perfect, so I'm trying to get them on the table saw, even though they're a pain, because I'm cutting the 4x8 sheets the long way. All right, so I don't even know if I was recording on the last one. We've actually gotten a total of about 4 inches of snow. Most of it's melted off, and we're supposed to get another inch or two. It's still beautiful. It's supposed to get butt cold tonight, I think down to 15. Hanging out with the boy today. Oh, hi buddy. In front of the heater, got a little, oh, and that feels so nice. A little electric heater, kind of warming this up in here. I was curious what it could warm it up to for such a big space. I still have openings, like open air gaps. Most of the gaps, like the gap between the wall and the roof, I've actually taken a piece of scrap trim, rubber trim, and kind of filled those in all the way around, and just kind of temporarily sealed things off just to keep the air out. Don't know if you can hear it or not, but the Oasis is actually running right now. It's doing a preheat because I've got the thermostat on, and it is down here running. It's not too loud really, but I've got about 12.5 hours on this thing, and I still have some work down here, but there's my little control panel. There's the flame running. This is from the top side, and I can open the bay door and get to it as well. That's kind of telling it what's going on, telling me what's going on, I guess. Oh. Yeah, tight. So I think we're gonna punch holes for the spray foam insulation. I've got a bunch to do. These guys. So I'm basically gonna run a tube down here and start filling the columns, because the insulation is warm to the touch, and the walls, the exterior walls, are absolutely frigid. So it is 26 or 28 outside. Let's see, 28 outside. And it's 53 right now in here. That's all from that little electric heater. I've had it on for, I don't know, about an hour or so. It is 12:30 on a Sunday, and basically what I'm doing is I am going to run the Oasis and see how warm it keeps this thing, probably bring it up to about 60, and how long it runs for over the next 8 hours. Basically the Oasis will cycle on and off as it needs to heat the water in the chamber. And then these guys, that little fan, that little guy, and then this little guy are all wired up to the thermostat, and once the boiler gets up to temp, those guys will kick on. So we're just going to kind of see how it does. Another little test run on the heating system, and while that's running, we're going to be drilling holes. So let's see how it goes, tube. It's going to be gorgeous today. So we're warming up the rig, and we're going to start tearing the ceiling back apart. Let's see what we've got here. So as you can see, something like insulation, some of the insulation has worked its way down as the metal cools and heats, it expands and contracts, and the gaps open up just a little bit to let them get down. So what I've done is I started marking where my lights are going, and I'm gonna go through and mark all my panels so I know where they go back in the ceiling and in what order. And I'm gonna pull these guys down, and what I need to do is a couple things. I need to get the wiring in, and it's gonna be all in conduit for all the lights that are going for the bedroom, living room, all the can lights up in the ceiling. And I also need to get bracing for, let's see, areas like this, where I've got a closet basically going down here, and I've got nothing across here for the closet to tie into. So I've got to get bracing there. I've got to get bracing up in the ceiling for, like, for example, there's going to be a wall around this guy that comes from the upper ceiling that encapsulates this when it comes down. And the purpose of that wall is so I can have a cabinet on this side attached to the wall, and a cabinet on this side for the bedroom attached to the wall and the ceiling, not just the ceiling. And to conceal the plumbing is probably the big one, and electrical. I'm gonna have electrical switch right there-ish, heading up into the bedroom lights. Anyway, I also have to, you'll see that black X up there. That's a reminder that I need to put bracing up against my studs, aluminum bracing for the bolts that have to come through the ceiling, the roof rather, for the solar panel mounting rails. And I've got to weld angle iron up in there, and then get the wiring in, and then cut all of my, and the bracing, and then cut all of my panels to kind of fit back in place and get those guys set so I can be done with the ceiling. And then we'll move on to, like, I've got all my notes everywhere. 12 volt wiring. You can see 12 volt USB, 110. I've got some little reminders about where some of the framing goes. So yeah, weather's turned nice, and that's kind of the plan for the next few days, because it's going to take me a while. I've got all my little controls labeled for the kitchen here, kitchen slide out. I've got power for my cooktops, outlet power above the counter, power for the fridge and the microwave. So that is the next big project, and framing. So let's go, Tube.